Welcome to the Legacy Network, bppaln.org, the Party Report. I'm CBO Holiday. The UN's head of aid operations said the earthquakes rescue phase is coming to a close, and efforts will turn to providing shelter, food and care to the survivors as the combined death toll in Turkey and Syria tops 36,000, with that number expected to rise a little over 1 week after the first 7.8 magnitude quake rocked the two countries. The hopes for miraculous rescues is fading, and anger is mounting as the UN admits relief efforts failed the people in northwest Syria. On Friday, the Syrian government approved aid deliveries to the rebel hold northwest after major delays to the war-torn region. Over 5 million additional people in Syria may become homeless after the quakes, as the region also faces winter blizzards and ongoing cholera outbreak. Meanwhile, in Turkey, authorities ordered 113 arrests linked to the construction of collapsed building. Some 25,000 buildings collapsed or were badly damaged. Opposition parties have accused the government of President Richard Erdogan of not enforcing regulations. Some survivors, meanwhile, say rescue operations as their loved ones never reached as their loved ones were stuck under the rubble. But about the situation is beyond terrible. This is what some of the survivors had to say. Here, my mother and sister are still under the rubble. I cannot reach them in any way. My soul is gone. I'm dying. They don't expect anything from the government. From this point on, everyone's blood is on their hand. President, everyone's blood is on their hands, unquote. President Erdogan has admitted to shortcomings in the country's response to the disaster. We'll have more news on this earthquake later from Syria. In Israel, protesters are massing outside the Knesset in Jerusalem as the far-right ruling coalition advanced a plan to expand its power and weaken the judiciary. Over the weekend, tens of thousands demonstrated against the government for the fifth straight week as President Dives Kriswak issued a rare warning, quote, that we are barely a moment away from a collision and even from a violent collision, unquote. This comes as Israel legalized 9 illegal outposts in occupied West Bank, turning them into settlements, and to move the Palestine Authority linking to an open war. The Biden administration said it opposed the plan, though it is not clear if it will take any action against Israel. Meanwhile, on Friday, a Palestinian driver rammed the car into a crowd outside Jerusalem, killing 2 Israeli children and 1 man. The next day, a Palestinian man was fatally shot by an Israeli settler in the northern West Bank, and Israeli forces killed a 14-year-old teenager Sunday in a raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. The Pentagon says U.S. forces killed 12 al-Shabaab fighters in an airstrike in a remote area of Somalia Friday, claiming no civilians were killed or injured. It was impossible to independently verify. Last year, the Biden administration redeployed hundreds of special operation troops to Somalia. After then, President Trump withdrew them in 2020. The Pentagon says fighter jets shot down 3 unidentified objects from the skies above Alaska's, Canada's, Yukon, and Michigan over the weekend. A White House spokesperson said the objects posed a danger to civilian aviation and were much smaller than a Chinese high-altitude surveillance balloon the Air Force shot down off the coast of South Carolina a few weeks ago. That incident prompted Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to cancel a planned trip to Beijing over the weekend. The Commerce Department announced it would sanction 6 Chinese companies said to support China's spy balloon program. In Beijing, China's foreign ministry said the U.S. illegally flew high-altitude balloons into China airspace more than 10 times over the past year as a part of a much broader spy program. Chinese spokesperson Wang Wenbin said, quote, for the longest time, The U.S. has abused its own technological advantages to carry out large-scale and indiscriminate wiretapping and theft of secrets from all over the world, including from its allies, unquote. Meanwhile, when asked about whether extraterrestrial aliens could be the source of the unidentified objects, the commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command said, quote, I don't rule out anything, unquote. Brazilian President Luiz Laculiola da Silva met with President Biden at the White House on Friday, where Biden condemned violent extremism following last month's attack on government buildings in Brasilia 1 week after Lula's inauguration. The assault by supporters of far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro immediately drew comparisons with the January 6 U.S. Capitol insurrection just 2 years earlier. Brazil, the United States stand together. We reject political violence and we put great value in democratic institutions. The pair also discussed the climate crisis after meeting. Lula said he was confident the U.S. would join a fund to protect the Amazon from deforestation. Quote, I am convinced that we're in a different era. Brazil has returned to the world stage and is using its political power, unquote. The respectability that Brazil has earned so that the people, together with the countries, comply with the task we have to fully fulfill for humanity. Brazilian government data shows deforestation in the Amazon decreased in January, the first month of Lula's presidency, compared to the same period last year. While in D.C., Lula also met with progressive lawmakers, including Senator Bernie Sanders, a Congressmember Alexander Cortez, and with the heads of major U.S. unions. A warning to our viewers: this headline contains descriptions of police violence. In Northern Carolina, a newly released police body camera video shows Daryl Tyree Williams, an unarmed 32-year-old black man, warning he had heart problems after a group of Raleigh officers repeatedly tasered him until he lost consciousness. Williams was heard telling officers, I've got heart problems. Please, please. Despite the appeal, officers tased him a third time. He died about an hour after his violent arrest, January 17th. 6 officers have been placed on administrative leave while the Raleigh Police Department carries out an investigation. The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation also conducting its own probe. In Spain, more than 250,000 people marched through the central Madrid Sunday to oppose the dismantling of the public health system by the capital region's right-wing government. The massive protest was led by unions who complain of long patient waiting lists and staff shortages. Well, our situation is getting worse and worse. As we have fewer resources and less staff, we believe that everything that is being done is in favor of private health and it's a business. We think we have to fight against this and defend the public health system as it's what makes us all equal in Portugal. More than 150,000 school teachers and their supporters marched through Lisbon Saturday to protest soaring inflation and low wages. Portugal's lowest paid teachers earn less than $1,200 a month. They're demanding pay increases, less punishing schedules, and faster career progression. We've been badly treated for a long time by society that forgets the importance and responsibilities of education. So we are here today, and we will be here for many more days to come in France. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets of cities nationwide Saturday in the fourth day of action against plans to slash the nation's pension system. Unions estimated over 500,000 people joined protests in Paris to oppose President Emmanuel Macron's bid to raise the age of retirement from 62 to 64. At least 6 refugees died after their inflatable boat was adrift at sea for several days as they tried to reach the Canary Islands in Spain. 23 others on board were rescued near the islands of Tenerife. The boat had departed from a coast near the city of Dakala in Western Sahara. A Spanish humanitarian group estimates nearly 2,000 refugees died in 2022 while trying to reach the Canary Islands by boat. New Zealand's declared a state of emergency in several regions, including its largest city of Auckland. As cyclones, Gabrielle's were ashore at high tides, bringing powerful winds, dangerous storm surges, and torrential rains. Emergency officials warned residents in low-lying areas to evacuate ahead of the storm's arrival, which follows record rainfalls last month that caused extensive flooding and left 4 people dead. That please enough please have a plan to leave your home if you see water levels rising around you, or if you're worried about land stability around your property. Don't wait to be told to leave. This comes as raging wildfires in Chile have killed over 2 dozen people, displaced thousands, scorched some 1,400 square miles of forest, and a Norway Greenpeace activist have disembarked a massive Shell oil vessel after 13 days of occupation and a 2,500-mile journey before the vessel docked at the port of Hoxton. The 6 activists climbed the platform's flare boom, waving a banner that said "Stop drilling, start paying." They first boarded the vessels north of the Canary Islands 2 weeks ago, calling on Shell and other fossil fuel corporations to take responsibility for their role in climate change and to pay loss and damage funds to help poor countries who bear the brunt of a global disaster. Those are some of the headlines. This is the Legacy Network, BPP, ALN, Party Report. I'm CBO Holiday.